Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hardcore Human Design Podcast. We are going to be talking about moving today, and that is going to include moving houses, but also moving in a travel environment way. So on the other line, we have Celestina, as always, on the other side of the world.
Hey guys, other line. That's such like an old school millennial thing to say. I feel like kids nowadays don't think of it as like phones and the interwebs being connected by like cords, you know?
You're very right. The other day I heard someone say speed dial. And another person was
Oh
also
yeah.
responding, I don't think people do that anymore. You can put me in your favorites, but speed dial is not a thing. I was like, okay, yeah. I didn't even think about it because
That's
I
so
still
funny.
understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, on the other side of the
Dude,
world, on the other side of the, what do you call it?
I don't satellite. I assume that's how we're connected.
Okay, voice over IP.
Yeah.
VoIP. Okay,
Alrighty
so
guys,
let's
let's
get started on the
do
topic.
this.
And it's going to be a very interesting conversation because we have a quad left on my side. If you don't know variables yet, it's the arrows that are showing up on quite a few platforms, but not all of them. So if you do see arrows around the head area of your human design chart, those are the variables. There are 4 in total, and they can either be pointing left or pointing right. And then there is a lot more information in them, but we're mainly going to be focusing on the direction today. We may dive into a few more aspects, but for now, we're focusing specifically on the bottom left arrows and the bottom right arrow. So the bottom left and the bottom right arrow. So the arrows on the bottom, basically. And I have both of them facing left, and Celestina has both of them facing right. So that is why it's going to be pretty interesting to dive into it.
I'm
So,
excited.
so first of all, would you like to share your own experiences regarding moving? Because you have moved a lot in your life, and how does that feel to you?
Yeah. So my first move was when I was 13 or 14, I think. 13? No, I just turned 14. Sorry, that was one of those moments. And it was from New York to Vegas, which was completely different physical environments, completely different like cultural environments. So wild and crazy. Then moved back to the East Coast for college. So that was 4 years in Vegas, back to the East Coast for college. Spent 5 years there. Back to Vegas. And then since then, every 2 years, 2 to 3-ish years, my husband and I have moved because he's in the military. So from Vegas to New Mexico, from New Mexico to Western Florida, from Western Florida to Germany, and then Germany to here. We've gotten progressively further in all of our moves, and they've all been wild, crazy, and I think we've learned something from being in every place. Yeah, we'll dive more into that in just a little bit. But movement wise, that's, and actually, we're kind of in the process of deciding whether or not we want to move again right now. Not to a different country or a different state, but to a different location within our city. Mostly because we don't like our property management company, not because we don't like the house.
And how does David feel about that regarding moving so much?
I think he just understands that it's part of the job that he's signed up for. So I think it's just a life that he chose. So there's understanding. However, his lower left arrow points left, not right, like mine. So I don't think we respond necessarily to moving differently just because it has become just the norm for us over the past decade and a bit. So, but we do often talk about just like the future settling in like Italy in the countryside and like that being our lives. And I feel like he refers to that way more than I do. So it's really interesting to see that aspect of him play out in that way. Whereas me, I could probably travel forever and I'd be fine.
This kind of brings us to the arrow, the environment arrow, because yes, you could probably travel forever and be fine, because the environment arrow, when it's pointing to the right, is actually exactly that. So you can move more frequently and you feel comfortable doing it. And you can also do it without planning too much, right?
If I'm traveling by myself, I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person. But if I'm traveling with someone else, that person usually has more of a plan than I do.
Yeah, and I just talked to a friend of mine as well who is a somatic healer, and she has a friend who is very religious with her yoga practice, but she travels so much. She goes from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. But the one thing that stays consistent is her yoga practice. And this is kind of how she's compensating for all this movement, because this is the 1 hour or half an hour that she has in the day where she knows, okay, this is something that is there, it's consistent, it is something I can always do to kind of catch myself. But in her environment itself, she doesn't have the consistency because she always moves from place to place. And we talked about this. So this is also where the inspiration of having this conversation today came from, because me and her, we've traveled a lot and we felt very exhausted at some point. And now that I have moved into an apartment which is fixed for at least 1 year, and this is a very big commitment for everyone that knows me very well, because I usually don't really stay in a place for that long. But now it's really fixed. I cannot leave for 1 year and 3 months, and it doesn't feel scary. A few years back, I would have freaked out and I would have probably had severe commitment issues, but it feels very comforting, and I'm very happy that I can put my things into places, like fixed places. I can organize it, I can design it the way that I want to. And it just feels very, very, very comforting. And I feel more relaxed and grounded. And I haven't had this in a long, long time. I've packed up all of my things 2 years ago before going to Bali. And since then, I haven't unpacked these boxes. So now things come out to light. And I'm like, okay, do I still care about this? Do I still need it? Do I want it? And most of it is books. So I have a big book issue, I realized. I can't separate from books. But yeah, it shows me again that this variable, the environment variable, to me, I do need a foundation, a base where I feel at home, where I have all my things, and from there I can travel. And if I don't have that, I feel very destabilized. So my routine, for example, has gone out the window for the last probably 2 months approximately, because I was moving so much. I was even in Saudi Arabia the last 2 weeks, I was moving, going from place to place to visit different locations. Then coming back to Germany, I had to help my parents, then come here, then move, like just a lot of movement, a lot of change, and I could feel like this was not healthy for me.
Interesting. Was there a lot of movement? Because you asked me about movement in my life. Was there a lot of movement in your life prior to packing all of your stuff up and going to Bali 2 years ago as well? Like, and did that coincide with like your human design journey? Where did that fall into place? And then is this the first time, so many questions, I'm sorry. And is this the first time that you're like actually doing your own thing in your own place since learning about your design and the need for stability?
So I've moved out of my parents' house when I was 15 for the first time. I went to a boarding school and then I kind of moved back in for a few months to continue on another school, and then I moved to London to complete my A levels. And since I was 15, basically I moved back and forth and all over the world. So London, Bristol, Florence, India, Saudi Arabia, Bali. There were many different places. Yes, I've had apartments before and I've had my own space before, but this is the first time after learning human design where I have this knowing that I will be in a place for a long time. And to me, I can feel the difference because even in Bali, I thought, okay, I'm moving there, and that's why I packed up everything because I thought, okay, I'll stay there. And then as soon as I got there, it didn't feel right. The energy didn't feel right to me. It had also to do with the Hinduism that they practice there. It is very different to the one that they practice in India. And to me, it is an important part of my life. Not religiously practicing Hinduism, but there are a lot of things that I connect with in the Hinduistic faith that I enjoy incorporating into my routines and practices. So even Bali, I had a lot of instability because I was moving from Airbnb to Airbnb. And the longest I stayed in a place within 7 months was for 3 months straight. And everything else, I moved every week, every 2 weeks. So it was really, I could feel it in myself. I was losing so much hair. I really had already chosen some headscarves because I thought I was going bald. In the end, it was a lot of stress on myself, and it was the quality of water that I changed to a different kind of water that provided me with the right nutrients. But I can feel the difference of how it feels to have the stability and to not have it. And it's extremely comforting to me, even though I'm not a one line, but I am a quad left. And quad left means all of my arrows are pointing to the left.
Knowing exactly what's happening, having structure, having routine, writing lists, all of the above.
Yeah, she kind of put the quad left, summarized them very well. Yes, while the quad right, for example, would be more of a flow and less detail oriented, less structured, more big picture oriented, often having challenges with the educational system because it's very quad left oriented. And yeah, so for me, having a stable environment is very important, whereas for you, it is a bit less important. And I find it interesting to also see this with you and David playing out in this way.
Yeah, he's definitely more future focused in the sense of like T minus 12 years, 11 and a half years, we'll have like a really nice house or like just a house in Italy. Yeah. But for me, I'm just like, okay, cool. We're here now. Like we're gonna try and make the best of where we're at now. I feel like, yeah, cool, the future is there, but it's so important to be where you are because if you're just hoping and wishing for something else, you're not going to be happy where you're at, you know?
Definitely. I think this future, looking into the future, may also have to do with his collective aspect. So, depending on which circuitry is more defined, you either look into the past or the future. But for any kind of definition, it is always important what you just said, to be in the present moment as much as you can be. Of course, sometimes we will plan and think about, okay, what is it that I want in the future? But this shouldn't be a constant in anyone's life. So really trying to be in the present moment is golden rule for everyone. The other arrow that we wanted to look at was the perspective arrow. So that is the bottom right arrow. And if it is pointing to the left or to the right, there's also going to be slight differences here. So as Celestina mentioned, it has to do with planning, for example. It also has to do with manifesting. So a right-facing arrow manifests in a more open way. So it's not very fixed on this is exactly what I want to do or what I want to have. It is more a feeling of what you want in life, but not having a very clear vision and keeping that flow available to the universe, basically, for you to be guided. And the right facing arrow also is going more with the flow in the planning perspective. It's not about having a clear knowing or understanding of where exactly we want to go, for example, when you're moving or when you're traveling, to have an exact plan of how to travel through a country from top to bottom, left to right, but instead going to the country and then seeing how it goes, seeing where the road takes you. This is more of a quad right, of a right perspective individual. How do you feel about that?
From a manifestation point, like perspective, I find it very hard to be specific. So my arrow is pointing right. And I actually was working with a business coach back in like maybe 2019. And she's like, get super specific on what you want and like what you want your future to look like. I'm like, I literally cannot. I don't know how to do that. And I cannot. It just felt so wrong. And this is before I learned more about human design. I don't even, this was a business coach before I worked with a business coach who like introduced me to human design. But yeah, I just couldn't get specific. So even like looking at the apartment that we wanted in Germany, I was like, all I can really say is I want to be near the city center. I want it to be modern and I want light, like a ton of sunlight. And that's exactly what we got. It was dope. It was like a 15-minute walk to the city center, like 15-minute walk to coffee, down the street from a grocery store, ultra modern, heated floors. Oh, we peaked with that apartment. But I couldn't have told you all of the details that I wanted, right? Like I didn't know that the beautiful roulades would be built into the wall and all I have to do is press a button and not schlep a roulade down with my hand. Anyone who lives in Europe and has roulades would understand that luxury of just being able to press a button. But like, I didn't know that I wanted all of those details, but it was like, other than like the shape of the kitchen, it was the perfect apartment. So, all of that to say, with just kind of tying all this back into a move, I can never picture what the next move is going to look like for us because moves for in our life right now for the next decade are inevitable every 2 to 3 years. I can never picture what it's going to look like, but from a manifestation perspective, modern, close to coffee, and then very walkable. Those are my top three things that need to happen.
Sunshine,
Sunshine.
light.
Yeah. Light. Yes, exactly. And direct light. And right now, so I think though I have a light preference. I prefer an apartment that faces east-west rather than north-south because right now we have an apartment that faces north-south. And just because of where we are, Australia, in case you guys haven't know, like didn't know, it's very far south from the equator. So like the sun doesn't actually rise to the east here. It rises to like the northeast and then sets to the northwest. So if you go to the beach and look east, the sun is rising to the north. It's the weirdest thing. Anyway, the back of our house faces north and it's just very aggressive morning sunlight, but then there's no sunlight throughout the day. So I like a very specific type of sunlight. No, that was a very long
Interesting.
thing, but there, there you go. That's my answer.
Good answer. No, no, really, it makes so much sense looking at the variable. And also, you, as you said, you don't plan. And this is also part of the perspective. If you're by yourself, if you would be traveling by yourself, you would just do it as you go. Another point here to make, though, is also your G center. So you are someone who needs to be in the place to really feel out the place and then make a decision. So it would be less helpful for you because you have an undefined G center. It's undefined, right? Not completely open. So You have an undefined G center, and that means that you really need to feel out the place before moving there. So it would be less advisable for you to kind of choose an apartment out of the catalog, something like this, or out of the web internet. I don't know why I'm so analog at the moment today. I'm like old school.
Bring the boomer out. I love it.
Yeah, we also, the other day, we talked about catalogs of, back in the day, you could order clothes from a catalog, at least in
Yeah.
Germany. There were like a few
Yeah.
big brands.
Yeah, in the
So,
States
yeah.
too. Like Macy's, JCPenney's. Same, same. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I'm still stuck in that conversation somehow, even though it happened a week ago. No, but back to the topic. It's just more advisable for you to really feel into the apartment when you're stepping in, feeling the space, and saying, "Yeah, this is where I want to be." And this also goes for traveling. So for me, the interesting thing about that is that I chose to live in most places without having visited them ever. Like, only. So I have gone to London when I was very little to visit my godfather, but I didn't really remember it much. So when I was choosing to move there for my A levels, I just went without visiting. And I didn't know the school. I applied to the school. I didn't visit the school first. I just chose the school. I chose the place where I would be living without visiting it. I did the same thing with Florence. I had never gone to Florence, but I just really love Italy. So for me, I really wanted to live in Italy. So going to Florence was also exactly the same. Never saw the city, then chose the apartment there. I did go visit the apartments, but it was really a move into the city without having been there. Bali, I had gone when I was a kid, but never again. And I didn't also remember it that much. So same thing, just moving there and saying, okay, let's feel it out. But yeah, it's more of a direction that I have inside of me where I had this deep feeling that I need to go to these places or that I really want to go to these places. And only once I'm there, I will still feel into it and see, okay, does it match, does it not match? But the decision I make is usually based on decisions that don't require me to actually be on site a lot of times.
Interesting. So, how specific do you feel like you need to be with like the criteria that you want with a move? Or is it just, I don't know, is it just this internal feeling?
For now, before knowing human design, it was more of a heart pull. Like I was really following the heart pull of, for example, yeah, I really want and love to go to this and that place. Then I started with human design to implement as well the strategy of waiting for the invitation. And when I waited, looking back, the times that I waited for the invitation and then followed my heart pull, those are the times where I feel there was so much flow in the whole thing. So I really need to have both the invitation and the heart pull. And when I manifest, the best way for me to do it is with a vision board. It is really having a very precise vision of what it is I want, where I want it. It doesn't have to be location per se, but for example, I really want to live at the beach, at the ocean at some point. And when I was doing that in Bali, the energy was off though. But what I had on my vision board was extremely close to what I was living during that time. And that was the vision board for, well, 2022, 2021, 2022, something like this, when I was in Bali. So it was really, usually my vision boards come into fruition either in that year or the year after. But the more that I look at it, the more that I see it, it does happen the way that I have placed it on my vision board. And there was one image for 2020 that I made where I had this beautiful place next to the ocean. And I had photoshopped myself into it, but there were 10 empty pillows in front of me. And it was basically a yoga situation place thing. And I had organized a trip with Neue Wege in Germany to take people to India. And this was supposed to take place right at the time where Corona started, I think 1 or 2 weeks after the lockdown. So this was also the time where we had to go to the Berlin International Travel Fair, ITB, International Travel Fair Berlin, that way around. And that event was canceled 2 weeks before it took place. But the funny thing is that on the vision board, I had this image of me hosting a retreat. And in the end, it was exactly that, where I was sitting by myself in Bali at some point, but I didn't have the clients, and the trip never took place. I had these empty pillows because it didn't happen. Corona happened. So I wasn't precise enough, or I was, yeah, the image was reflecting what actually happened, that the trip couldn't take place, basically.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I have to be very specific and very careful with my vision boards.
Put actual humans on the pillows.
Yes.
So interesting. I've vision boarded, I think maybe like once or twice, and I just can't. I can't see it on the other end. So interesting.
Yeah, it's not meant for you if you look at the variable. It's if you have the perspective facing right, it's not vision boards are usually not meant for you. There are some elements in the chart that may show some more insights, but I'm pretty confident in saying that usually if your bottom right arrow perspective is facing right, it is a vision board is not the way that you should be manifesting or try to manifest. So don't put the pressure on you in that aspect. And just, yeah, go more into your feelings, into the flow.
And I've found that like how the vibe feels, like how I feel in that space is game changer, or how I feel around the person, right? Like if it's manifesting a human. Really weird side note on this. So my initials are CBB. If you look at your keyboard, those three letters are next to each other. And you're looking at your keyboard, yeah. So I just thought it was so cool as a kid. I would just like type CBB like with three fingers like on the keyboard, or you can do like a piano slide for those three letters. So like as a kid, I'm like, dude, I have to marry with someone whose last name starts with B. Like I don't have a choice. I want to keep my initials. And 5-year-old me was saying this, fucking strong ass manifester. What's my husband's last name? It starts with a B. How freaking nuts
Yeah.
is that? Granted, I haven't changed my name and I don't plan on changing my name, but that's not the point. Little manifester me manifested this shit.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, exactly, when manifesting, you do look at the perspective arrow, but you are a manifester. And also as a manifesting generator, there's so much power in what you want to happen. So I think really following your inner authority, following your strategy, and even when you're hearing me say vision boards are recommended or not recommended, just feel into yourself. See how it feels. If my words triggered a reaction in you of, no, but I really want to do it, then do it. It's okay, do it. I don't think there should be any always and nevers in this entire thing. Really always, in this case, yes, always listen to your inner authority or your intuition. Listen to what feels right to you. And don't do something just because someone told you this or that. You can always give it a try for a few weeks if it resonates, and then see how it goes. Or a few months. For a vision board, it does need more time than just a few weeks, but yeah. So, is there anything else you would like to add to the subject?
No, I think that was it. And if you guys haven't looked into either of these arrows yet, go ahead and do so. choose a reputable space or place to look up your human design. Highly recommend Jovian Archive. They're not sponsors, but they're pretty accurate and it's free. So that's a really good way to look up your design, look up your arrows. I feel like though with Jovian Archive, it doesn't give you more specifics, so then you
Yeah.
have to look up more on your own. I think that's the only caveat there. But if you're just looking at left and right for the purpose of the discussion that we've had today, you can get the information that you need from just looking up your design on Jovian Archive.
Another great place would be Neutrino Design. That's an app. And Neutrino Design is also basing their calculations on a very safe source. So those are some that I confidently can recommend, and they will provide you with more insights regarding the variables and also just generally your chart.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and for being here. And if you have any kind of recommendations on what you want to hear us talk about regarding human design, let us know. Contact us on Instagram at hardcorehd, and we will get to that.
And if you guys have listened for a hot minute and you like our show, can you rate and review? That'd be absolutely fantastic. Whatever platform you use, if you could share this with your bestie, share this with your frenemy, whoever. Let them know that we exist. And yeah, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next week, guys. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.